It's the Andrew Christopher Show.
It's gonna be a good one,
Andrew Christopher, your host.
because it's all about me,
It's the Andrew Christopher Show.
myself, and I.
But really we call it the AC Show.
So I hope you like that.
We really call it the AC Show.
It was my wife's idea.
Really call it the AC Show.
First shout out I gotta give.
It's the AC Show.
My last guest, Mr. Bobby Martin, got me this killer shirt. It's got The Rock, the People's Champ on it. Thanks, buddy. Also, Chris brought me some killer gifts. So, notice to future podcast guests, you should bring me a gift. It's gone well so far. Just saying. So, my wife had a great idea. She said, why don't you talk more about yourself? People want to know who you are, where you came from. And I was like, I don't know if people want to know that or listen to me talk about myself. I was kind of reluctant, but then I thought about it, and I thought it could be kind of cool. So hopefully you enjoy it. If you don't, let me know so I can tell my wife she was wrong, because that doesn't get to happen very often. But I'm still going to start off with a bit of family time first, because I was driving in my car. I don't have the family time drop ready yet. I want to get the kids in here to scream, it's family time, but it hasn't happened yet. It's coming. So we were driving to gymnastics. Both Jaden and Haven, our two daughters, are in gymnastics, and Jaden flipped on the country radio station, and I was like, let's change it. And she said, why don't you like country music? Which I like a lot of classic country music or older stuff. Not even classic, but like, older Tim McGraw or Garth Brooks. But the new stuff just doesn't do it for me. And so that's what I told her. And I said, it kind of all sounds the same. And I don't like all the voices out there these days. And out of the blue, she just looks at me and she says, well, Dave Matthews sucks. And I was like, what? Because we weren't even talking about him. And I was like, did you just say that? Because I love Dave Matthews. And so it cut me pretty deep and threw me off guard. And I had to remind myself, you're talking to a 10-year-old. She says, Dave Matthews sucks. And I said, well, all these country guys suck. She's like, no, they don't. Dave Matthews sucks. I said, well, I bet you Dave Matthews put out more music and has more fans than all these country people combined. And she said, well, he still sucks. And I was like, why? And she says, he just does. It's hard to reason with a 10-year-old. So we're trying to figure out a way to get her to listen to better music. And we're struggling with that. She wants to listen to all this pop music and stuff, which, yeah, there's some guilty pleasures in there, but it's Dave Matthews, one of the greatest singer-songwriters of all time. And she says, well, he just sucks. It was hard. It really, really cut me deep. Anyway, there's a bit of family time. If you guys have any ideas on how to make kids like better music, let me know. So we'll get into more about me. I wrote down a timeline, another great idea from my wife, so you might see me following along. But we're breaking it up. It's going to be 3, I guess maybe 4 episodes. We'll break it up by decades. So decade 1, from when I'm 0, born, to 10 years old, which I know is not really a decade. I guess it's more like 11 years. But some of these timelines might be a bit off. My memory's not great. I did my best to plug away. I picked my mom's brain a little bit. So we'll start, obviously, with decade 1. When I was born, July 24th, 1987, in Chilliwack General Hospital, weighing in at 7 pounds, 14 ounces, completely average, I think. And my mom, Mary, my dad, Don, and I had 3 older sisters. I still do. Michelle's my oldest sister. She's approximately 6 years older than me. Then Carolyn's 4 years older than me. And Lisa's 2 years older than me. So came home, 3 sisters, mom and dad. We had a beautiful rancher in Agassiz on quite a good size piece of land, about 6 acres. They had corn at first. I don't know how long after I was born they got rid of it, but planted hazelnut trees. That's all I remember growing up, with a big orchard of hazelnut trees. And I guess I was a bit of an accident. Here's the first surprise. My dad had a vasectomy, doctor screwed it up, I guess. And surprise, baby Andrew on the way. I'd like to think it's the best surprise of my family's life. And because of that, they had to build a whole new addition onto our house, which I'm sure was not cheap. So if I put us in some financial troubles, then I'm really sorry about that. So yeah, they took out where the garage used to be and built on like a whole nother lower section with 2 bedrooms and another like playroom for the kids, kind of living room area. Loved that house. It was so cool. So much room. Like there was a big grass front yard and grass backyard, and then the whole orchard, and had a creek running through the back. And I spent a lot of time hitting golf balls back there when I got into golf and running around with my friends. So obviously 0 to 3, I don't remember much. My mom says I was a pretty happy baby. Always excited, wanting to run around, do stuff. Probably never cried. Probably was walking and potty trained by like 6 months old. Something like that. But I guess getting into like a first real cool story my mom told me. I don't really remember it because I was only 4, which would be kind of around 1991. See the timeline? Sticking to it, babe. She says the premier of BC was visiting Agassiz, walking around, and had a bunch of news cameras following her. Her name was Rita Johnson, for those of you who might remember her. And I guess I bent over to pick up a rock, and one of the camera guys looking through his camera tripped like head over heels over top of me, smashed the camera, and got a little dusted up. And so I got to be on the news. I was on Global News for tripping this camera guy, and I got to meet the premier. So my first little showcase in the spotlight. I thought that was a pretty cool story, and one of the earliest stories I really have. I guess after that we took a trip to England in 91, my mom said. Another injury story. It's all I really remember. Not that I remember it, but the memory everyone always talks about. I fell out of a van that we had rented. We were driving around doing the touristy thing, and I was getting in or out, and I think someone bumped me from the step on this van, fell backwards onto the gravel, and cut the back of my head open pretty bad. And they had to bandage me up. I had wrapped around toilet paper or something. They took care of me. So I got out traveling the world at a pretty young age. I was pretty lucky. We did quite a bit of traveling. So that was 91. I guess then I got into kindergarten at age 5. I think at the same time I started playing hockey, which is one of the mainstays you'll hear a lot about in these first couple episodes. Played a ton of hockey, was a huge hockey fan. So at age 5, I entered Tyke, started playing, and obviously really enjoyed it. I got big into the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. I'm guessing the movies started coming out around then. And I remember my first hockey game, which I'm not sure if it was that early or if I was more like 6, but I went with my godparents, and they came and picked me up, and I was decked out in Anaheim Mighty Ducks gear. Had the toque, jacket, gloves, had a sweater underneath the jacket, all Anaheim Mighty Ducks stuff, and I was going to a Chilliwack Chiefs game. So it was kind of weird, but I remember that. I remember standing at the door already. Pretty exciting thing for me. Hockey was huge. Obviously, I was a Canucks fan, being from Vancouver, and we'll get into a little bit of that later when they went to the Stanley Cup. My first big letdown. But first, kindergarten, grade 1. Again, my mom said I was just such a happy kid. She said I was really stylish. She said I always wore backwards hats and like neon shirts and purple shorts. Purple was my favorite color. Again, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks thing. I don't know why. I just loved it. And I was really into Lego. I think most kids are. Lego and Playmobil as well. But I think I liked Lego more. I had a few different collections. What I got here? I used to collect rocks. The reason why I tripped the camera guy, collecting rocks. I had a big car collection, like little cars, but, antique-looking cars or race cars. My parents, if my dad went away for work, he would always come home and bring me a little car or something like that or airplane from the airport. Anything kind of like that, little Yeah, little figurines. And then also dinosaurs was another big thing I was into. We did go to Calgary. I didn't ask my mom about this, but we went to Drumheller where the dinosaur museum is. And that was a big point in this first decade. I loved that. I collected so many dinosaurs. So yeah, I was big into collecting. I think around then I got in piano lessons. My first introduction to music. We went to the Catholic church. I was singing in choirs as well. So I don't know exactly when that started, but piano lessons I would think started around age 6 with Becky Bokenfor in Agassiz. Great teacher. Kept it up for quite a while. I was never that interested in it. I'm sure glad it happened because it gave me a really good base knowledge of music that obviously I've put to pretty good use being a professional musician. And yeah, so I started piano lessons then. And then moving along, I guess that was like, so that'd be like grade 2. Grade 3, had this teacher, Miss Goff. I think she was the first teacher I kind of had a crush on. Long curly hair, pretty lady. For some reason, one of my main memories of that is we would always start singing the Ricky Lake theme song. Go Ricky, go Ricky. 'Cause I guess that was a big deal back in the day. I'm not sure how that ties into Miss Goff or grade 3. But anyway, into that. Around that time, probably started playing t-ball with Bobby. Loving the shirt, bud. It's nice and comfy. It's pretty small. This is why Bobby looked so big on the last episode. So started playing t-ball with Bobby. His dad was coaching us. Still playing lots of hockey. Getting into all the kind of sports, intramural stuff, house games at Kent Elementary, which I'll talk a little bit about later. Next kind of big moment sticks out in my head. I guess this would be, around grade 2, 1994. I was 7, so yeah, I think that makes sense. And the Canucks went to the Stanley Cup final. This would be my first moment of gambling and my first big heartbreak as a sports fan. Again, my godparents were over. I think them and my parents were going out to watch the game. And my godmother, Shirley, she wanted to place a bet. So we bet $1, 1 loonie, because toonies weren't out back then, I don't think. So we bet $1. I remember them coming home. I remember being so upset. The Canucks lost, and I had to give her $1, and I gave her the loonie, but she was such a nice lady. She turned around, gave it right back to me. So kind of broke even. Pretty cool. But yeah, the Canucks lost. Pavel Bure was my idol playing hockey growing up. That's why I wore number 10. My wife makes fun of me all the time. Anytime I sign anything, it's, it used to be Andrew Putt. Now it's Andrew Christopher. Andrew Christopher with a number 10, if you ever see my signature. And that's why, because of Pavel Bure. And I thought I was so cool to do that I kept on doing it because I still think I'm cool. For those of you just listening, this is my wife's mug. Works great. Big cup of tea. I got to figure out, where are we here? Okay, 94, age 7, grade 2-ish. Talk about a few of the friends that I had in this first decade. My best friend kind of all throughout school was always Taylor. We were in opposite kindergarten classes. I was in the morning. He was in the afternoon. But then after that, we were kind of inseparable. Whether we were in the same class or not, we always found ways to sneak out and get out together at recess or lunchtime, play together, and always go into each other's houses. Obviously, Bobby, another great friend of mine, like I said, I always remember going to his. He asked me on Facebook, he said, "Do you remember my birthday parties?" And I do vaguely remember. I remember they were great. I kind of remember the house and just always running around. And then a couple kind of random friends that were only in my life for a year or two that really stuck out and came with some pretty funny stories. One was Eric Moon, him and his family owned the convenience store, the 7 and 9 Esso, which I'm sure all the Agassiz people listening will remember. They owned that, so they lived up above it. And I would hang out with him quite a bit because that was right by my place. Our house was on Wilson Road, awesome little country road. I guess everything in Agassiz is a country road. But so he lived up above the convenience store. So the best part was we would just walk down the stairs, convenience store, candy aisle, fill up a bag. Didn't have to pay for it. I was like, this is the coolest. I'm going to hang out with this kid every day. And then we'd just take it back up to his place and munch out. I don't know what we really did. We didn't really play video games or anything, which was nice. You know, we actually just played as kids with toys or on our bikes or something. But then one day I remember, because we took the same bus, I took the bus to school with my older sisters, obviously, because it was about a 10-minute drive on the bus anyways, 5 minutes if you're just driving straight there to our school. So I would take the bus, and one day after school, him and I were just horsing around on the bus, and I grabbed him by the arm, and I was like, watch this, dude. I saw it on a movie. And I tried to like flip him over, but his arm was the wrong way. So instead of it bending properly, it was at the angle where it couldn't bend because his elbow was stopping it. And so I reefed on his arm, tried pulling him over, and he just starts screaming, excruciating pain. He was pretty tough about it. Like, I don't remember him really crying or making a big scene. But and then the next stop was my stop at my house. And I see him there, and I'm like, sorry, man, see you later. Get off the bus. And then the next day, as we pick him up, he walks on the bus with a sling in his arm, and I don't know what kind of damage I did. I was too young to understand, but he was wearing a sling for the next week or two. And felt pretty bad, but that's my my funny story about Eric Munn. Great kid. I don't know what he's doing. If you somehow see this, get at me, bro. Would love to see you again. So, yeah. Another kind of funny story. Kid named Keith Galanzowski. Again, if you're out there, come at me. Because I'm guessing these were both around grade 2, 3, or 4 when I was hanging out with these kids. We were pretty young. And this is one of those super random memories that I've got a couple of them. I'll just tell you this one and the next one that you're just like, why do I remember that? Like, it's nothing like hurting Eric. Like, obviously I would remember that. But these ones, I'm like, why does that memory stick out so much? And I think it's just your brain, for some reason, remembers these things. And I honestly don't think it has any important meaning. But being an adult, as I've thought about it so much, I was like, oh, maybe it was because of this. Maybe it was because of that. But so this one, I've decided it taught me the importance of inflection in your voice. But that wasn't a question, so I shouldn't have said it like that. You know what I mean? Anyway, we were at Keith's house. He lived fairly close. I think I was able to ride my bike to his place. Again, in Agassiz, you probably could have ridden your bike anywhere. But I'm talking like 5-minute bike ride. I was at his house. And so we were just hanging out. And his mom comes out. And she's like, do you want an orange pop? And I was thinking, Orange Crush, like a soda pop, like a can of pop. And I was like, why did she say it like that? Do you want an orange pop? Because in my head, it would have been orange pop. And so I was like, yeah, totally. I'll have an orange pop. And then she came out, and it was an orange popsicle. And I was like, whoa, that's weird, lady. I thought you meant a can of pop. I didn't say that to her, but in my head, I was like, oh, it makes sense now. An orange pop, like an orange popsicle, instead of an orange pop, which would be the drink. The importance of inflection in your voice. So that's when I learned that. Again, random. I have no idea why I remember this so well. I have a terrible memory. My wife will attest to that. I've got a lot of song lyrics, a lot of songs up here. But yeah, for some reason I recall that moment. And this next one I think is even weirder. It was just some family friend was at our house, and we were in the bathroom. I guess they were talking about our plumbing for some reason, looking at the toilet. And so when I see a toilet now, I'm reminded of this. And this one I'm thinking, introduced sarcasm into my life. And he says, yeah, I mean, sometimes, if it gets real plugged up, just throw a chicken bone down there and flush the toilet and it'll clean it all out. And I was like, guess that makes sense. Being 8 or 9 years old, I was like, okay, makes sense. I've never tried it. And I'm guessing he was being sarcastic. But I don't know, any plumbers out there, if the chicken bone thing is real, let me know, because then I'll use that. But I'm thinking it is not a real thing. And he was being sarcastic. So, probably two of the weirdest memories that for some reason are so clear in my head. And thought I'd share those with you guys. A little bit of decade one memories. This is going okay, I think. I'm getting through this timeline. I'm glad I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget anything. And I think at the end we'll do like kind of to start the next episode, I'll do like errors and omissions because I'm sure my sisters and my mom will be like, that's not true at all. Or they'll say, you forgot about this. How could you forget this? I feel like one of those things they would say I'm getting to. Because next on here, I've got the topic of Camperland, which is a campground near Bridal Falls that we spent a lot of summers at. And we would get like a summer pass to the water slides, which is the Bridal Falls water slides right next door. And we would go there every day and have a good time. And at Camperland, so this will be my introduction to performing. And they had talent shows. I don't know if it was every month or every couple of weeks. And so my sisters and I, for this first one, I remember we obviously were big Spice Girls fans. They were a big thing back then. And we did a dance routine and a lip sync to Wannabe by the Spice Girls. I'll give you a minute to guess which Spice Girl you thought I was, which is fairly obvious. Baby Spice. So I was Baby Spice. I'd like to think I took the lead, and I remember finishing off the very final note of the song, and I did the splits. I was still pretty limber back then. I don't think I could do that now. But so that one I could blame on my sisters, saying they made me do it. The next one I could not, and it was still a Spice Girls song. And I guess I had started singing, like I said. I was singing in the choir growing up, doing some piano lessons, and I, at the next talent show, sang the song Two Become One. Something like that. Very powerful love song by the Spice Girls. Sang that solo, just on my own, not a lip sync. And there you go. And it took off from there. People said I sounded like a young Bon Jovi or some shit like that. I don't know, but I was stoked. I was always happy on stage. I still am. And Camperland was it was a big part of our summers. We spent a lot of summers up there, a lot of time. It was only, 15 minutes from our house, but we would take the camper up there. My parents would go to work from there, and we would just hang out and bike around, and made some good friends up there too. Some guys that we're still in touch with, so that was pretty cool. So that was what I have. So that was probably 96. Well, I guess, like I said, we were there a few summers. But then on here, the next thing I have, again, in my misery of being a Vancouver sports fan, which I think you guys will now, like I said, I'm hoping all this will kind of open up to you guys and see why I am the way I am today, why I'm such a diehard Canucks fan, that I'm just longing for the day they could bring home a championship. Obviously, the Stanley Cup, I mean. And I know a lot of you will laugh at that, but it's ingrained in me because I suffered through that Game 7 loss in 94. And then this, my first professional basketball game, I remember very vividly. It was the Vancouver Grizzlies, Sharif Abdur-Rahim and Bryant Big Country Reeves. I was stoked getting into basketball. I'm pretty sure I went there with Taylor. Him and I were always the duo on the court. So we went to this basketball game, the Grizzlies versus the Los Angeles Lakers. who had a young kid on their team. You might have heard of him, Kobe frickin' Bryant, who now is my favorite basketball player of all time. Back then, I didn't appreciate that I got to see him, but I remember the game because the Grizzlies were terrible. This was March 27th, 1997. The Grizzlies, well, they were always terrible. And the Lakers were pretty good. They've been good for a while. And but this game, they actually had a chance. They pushed it to overtime. So everyone was stoked in Vancouver, right? They'd never had a big following. That's kind of why it didn't work out. But this game, they were actually taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. They pushed them to the ropes. And then I just remember the ref made this bullshit call where the Lakers guy got fouled, but they allowed him to continue on and made the hoop when they probably should have blown the play dead. And he made the basket, and then he made the free throw, and it kind of put it out of reach. They ended up winning. The Lakers ended up winning 102-98 in overtime. And again, I was crushed. Probably went home, cried myself to sleep. It was tough. So that was 97, which I guess would put me grade 5, around there. Yeah, no. So the summer, that would have been 97. But before that, the summer of 97, my family and I, so I would have been turning 10. So again, getting to the end of this first decade, turning 10, and we took a road trip. We drove all the way across Canada. My dad worked as like a feed salesman for, dairy feed for all the farmers. A big farm community, obviously, in Agassiz, and dairy farming huge across Canada. And there was a big conference in Quebec. And so we drove all the way from Agassiz to Quebec City. And along the way, like the first night, we made it all the way to Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan or something. Like we drove something ridiculous, like 18 hours that day. I don't know. You guys can do the math on that. But so we drove all the way across Canada in a GMC Safari. Like mom, dad, 4 kids. I think someone even brought a friend. Either Michelle, Carolyn, or Lisa brought a friend along. So like it was packed, and we were in that van for a long time. And the soundtrack, which will explain a bit of my musical taste, there and back, I feel like nonstop. Garth Brooks, then Shania Twain, then Garth Brooks, then Shania Twain, then Shania Twain, then Garth Brooks. So this is why I can probably sing note for note any Garth Brooks or Shania Twain song out there. And I've done it a few times live. People are like, hey, play some Garth Brooks. And I'll like rattle off 10 songs in a row that I've never played before. I just look up the chords and the lyrics on my iPad and just start going through them. It's so much fun. And I still love Garth Brooks. Like I said, I'm not huge into country music anymore. Garth Brooks is great. Shania Twain, yeah, she's fine. Obviously, great Canadian. I'm just not as big of a fan as Garth Brooks. So that was our soundtrack, crossing Canada and back. We kind of came back through the States. I don't have any big memories about that. I know at the conference, it was pretty cool for the kids. It was a family thing. You were supposed to bring your family, and they had activities for all the kids, but I don't remember any specifics. I guess on our way home, we were driving through Chicago, and my mom freaked out as we were driving, like on the highway. She was like, lock your doors. This is a rough part of town. She made everyone lock their doors so nobody could, jump in and rob us. Chi-Town. Yeah, so I've never been back. Pretty scared of the Windy City. I don't know if I'll ever make it. So there was, big cross Canada, which is a pretty big trip, right? Not everybody gets to do that. I was lucky as a kid. We traveled a lot, like I said. Lots of camping. Big into hockey, as I said. And so now coming back from summer, grade 5, 10 years old. And this is where I remember the Kent Elementary house games getting very serious. So I was a competitive kid, right? Big into sports. I was pretty good at most things I do, which my wife can attest to. She hates that. She'll tell you water sports or something is the one thing I'm not good at, which I just haven't had a chance to really figure out. But so I was very athletic, very competitive, and the house games at Kent Elementary, which kind of like the Hunger Games, you know what I mean? It's cool now thinking back at it. The house games, we were divided up into 3 teams. So all the students in the school. The Wildcats, go Wildcats. I eventually made captain of the Wildcats. And then there was the lowly Red Barons and the Roadrunners. And so we would compete at lunchtime, whether it was soccer or hockey or whatever else. And these teams would play off against each other. Maybe there was a 4th team I'm forgetting. Anybody from Agassiz, get at me if there was a 4th team. I feel like there probably was. But this was serious business. The kids would be like stretching or getting the goalie gear on in the classroom 10 minutes before lunchtime. Or if you didn't have goalie gear and you had to use the schools, you would be racing there to get the good pads or get the one goalie glove there was. Otherwise, you're using a baseball glove or something. And so that was something I really remember and really enjoyed in school. That was grade 5. I remember getting pretty serious. And yeah, I can't, I don't recall. I'm sure we won a few championships. Oh, and my buddy Stiggy brought up the fact that on Facebook, I asked some people on Facebook, hey, do you have any questions for me? And I've answered a few already. But my buddy Ryan brought up the fact that the Harrison Elementary School would play against Agassiz sometimes in these sports. And he was like, oh, do you remember getting your butt kicked by the Harrison boys? Which never happened. They were pretty terrible. I don't think we ever would have lost to them. And I'd be happy to have a rematch anytime, but just get at me. So that's something I really remember from elementary school. Another thing, I wanted to mention, we had a neighbor, his name was Larry, who lived right next door to us for quite a long time through this first decade. I don't remember when he passed away, but he had cancer and eventually passed away. But the coolest thing was he had a train track, like a miniature train track that went all around his backyard. And like it went a pretty long ways. Like it was probably like a 500-meter train track when all said and done. And so for all of any kids' birthdays, he would bring it out and we would get like 10 kids on there. And he would drive us around this train track. So cool. Such a nice guy. I know we had him over for dinner lots. I feel like my mom wanted to help take care of him because he lived on his own and he was pretty sick. He was missing half of his thumb. And he would tell us that it's because when he was a kid, he would suck his thumb. And then one time somebody tripped him and he said he bit off half of his thumb. Which I'm pretty sure was a lie. But that was his story he always told us back on Wilson Road. Let's get another thing here I remembered. My mom, Mary, was in these weird businesses. I thought they were weird. She worked for Kent Agencies, which turned into Barton's Insurance, selling insurance, and then and moved up. But she would do these things with other moms, and one was they had these big wooden signs that they would rent out, like a big penguin or a big cow, and they would say things like, "It's utterly amazing that so and so is 50," or "Lordy, Gordy's 40." They would write these things on these signs and put them out on people's lawns. I don't know how much money she made doing this, but I think it was just an excuse for her and the friends to get together and do something. And then she was selling, was it Tupperware? Or she was in one of those things too, like your stereotypical late 80s, early 90s selling Tupperware mom kind of thing. She'll correct me on that. That'll be on errors and omissions to start the next one. But I think it was Tupperware, something, or maybe it was some kind of toy. Yeah, Mom, give me a call. Let me know what it was, because it was another memory I had of you. For those of you watching on YouTube, as you can see, I've had some Nintendo games going on loop, Super Nintendo to be more specific, because that Christmas, I think it was Christmas of grade 5, I got this Super Nintendo. Right now it's on Donkey Kong if you're just listening. And if you are, head to my YouTube. They're pretty, I like the video portion of it too. And if even if you don't watch it, if you don't mind subscribing, I need to get some more subscribers, get my YouTube channel pumped up. So not the 64. I've got a Nintendo 64 too. I've got the original Nintendo. I got this Super Nintendo for Christmas though, and it was one of those gifts. Like if I had a favorite Christmas gift of all time, it was this thing. I remember opening it up, and I just remember yelling as loud as I could, like, "Yeah! I got this Nintendo!" I was so happy, and so it came. I think it came with Super Mario. Really quickly, I got NHL '94. Oh, that'll tell you something. So this was a little while ago. It was more like if I got NHL '94. So it was like back in grade 2. Man, that was an oversight. Anyway, I got it for Christmas sometime. My favorite Christmas gift of all time. So I guess we're jumping back ahead now to grade 5, which this was the start of young AC's love life. I, of course, and I did this twice. You'll hear about the second one in the next episode. At the end of the school year of grade 5, I wrote a note. I remember doing this because obviously I was too scared to talk to girls back then. So I wrote a note to Samantha, and I just said, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend? And she was pretty high profile in the school. Like all the guys had crushes on her. So I asked her out. End of the school year. Finally worked up the courage. I don't remember how she said yes. If she wrote a letter back, or if she gave me a call or something. But so then that whole summer, I never saw her once. We never kissed. Didn't even hold hands or anything. I think we made a couple phone calls. But she was my girlfriend, and I remember being pretty proud of that. So, yeah, my first girlfriend. Anyway, so I had another couple questions on Facebook. Somebody asked the first song I learned and performed, which I don't think they read that it was 0 to 10, but it still works because the first one I specifically remember, and really the only song on piano I still know today, is Joy to the World. Great Christmas carol. I think I must have performed it at a recital. So there was my first big performance piece, I would say. And someone asked when I knew I wanted to be a musician. It wasn't yet. I definitely wanted to be a hockey player growing up. That was the ultimate goal. I think maybe I thought about being a police officer or something, but I wanted to play in the NHL, no doubt. Play for the Canucks, number 10, take over from the Russian Rocket. What else do we have here? Oh, actually, this is good. My wife's dad brought up, what was your favorite part of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, classic film? And Jay, I do remember watching it as a kid. I don't know what age, but I remember specifically sitting down in our upstairs living room where we would always watch movies together as a family. And so we watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. All I remember, it was about a flying car and a bit of the song, of course. But I do remember specifically sitting down to watch that movie. And then Jay, my wife's dad, made us watch it this past Christmas, and it was a bit long for my liking, but still classic. You got to do it. So I toughed it out and watched the whole thing. But there you go. See, but I do remember it. Anyway, getting kind of towards the end here. Young AC. There's a little background. Hopefully, it opens up your eyes to why I am the way today. And as we move on, I think you'll see a lot more. The next decade should be fun because we're talking 10 to 20 years old. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens there. We'll talk about how Sam, Samantha, and I broke up and the rest of my love life. This will be the point where you'll hear about me losing my virginity. I don't know how much detail we'll go into, but you will. And you'll hear about the first time I got drunk in England at my cousin's wedding. There'll be a lot going on. Graduation, my first true love. Well, I guess not a true love. Jamie, you're my only true love. But my first love, my high school love. We'll talk a little bit about her. Yeah, it'll be fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And again, if you didn't, let me know. I'm probably still going to do it anyways. But if you have any questions for the next decade, send them my way. I would love to talk about things you guys want to know about 10 to 20-year-old Andrew, going through the end of elementary school and then into high school, a little bit of college as well. Like, this could get pretty fun. I think it could get pretty crazy. So thanks for checking this one out, you guys. Remember to subscribe, whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or watching on YouTube, and share the videos if you don't mind. Again, any questions, send them my way. Grab me on Instagram at Andrew Christopher Music. I'm going to leave you with another Parliament of Owls song, my original group. We're getting close to finishing the album. I'm pretty stoked about that. It's coming together really nicely. Should be out within the next couple months. Let's say 2 to 3 months. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good day, whatever it is you're doing. This one is called Halifax Beer. Hope you like it. And check this out. Get to my YouTube if you want to see the people's elbow.
I packed my guitar up, hope for the best. Hopped on a train, said so long to the west. I was singing for strangers all along the pier. Then I'd spend all my money on Halifax beer.
Catch the rest of that track on Spotify,
1, 2, 3, 4.
iTunes, Apple Music. Check it out.
Last call last night at the old Split Crow, and the girl that caught my eye. I bought her a drink, said, what do you think? You ever been with a West Coast guy? She just kept on laughing and she rolled her pretty eyes. She said, I haven't, I tell you what, he was probably twice your size. Well, he had a baby now, that ain't very nice. Don't knock me till you try me, darling, maybe try me twice. Well, he had a baby, I'm the only guy in here, just broken down in an East Coast town, drinking Halifax